Welcome to Kiwiradio.nz. This Friday, it's a live show at 10 a.m, 8th of September 2023. The elections are coming up in New Zealand, and we have one of the minor parties joining us today, NZLoyal. More about that straight after this opening song, a Kiwi artist that we have interviewed. You can check out our archives in the members page at Kiwiradio.nz. Jordan May is the artist, and the song is called... Let's have a look. Well, Jordan May is the artist. Kiwi Radio. The song is Jordan May, Warrior of Love. Kiwi Radio Live. Stay tuned for our chat with NZLoyal. That opening track is Jordan May, who has been on the podcast before as well. If you like Kiwi music, go check that out. Yes, you are. Speaking of warriors, we are speaking with one right now, an advocate for the typical Kiwis out there with elections coming up in October 14th. We have one of the minor parties actually joining us today. We're hoping to get them as many seats as possible in Parliament, if that's even possible. But we do have Jeanette Wilson, who's the Whangaporoa representative, on the line now just to kind of have a wee chat with us on radio. Firstly, welcome to the show there, Jeanette. What did you say? We will have Jeanette straight after this track. But first of all, some more Kiwi music. Keb Hart there on Kiwi Radio.
In my face, all that I can take. Put me in my grave, I can dance with devils.
Okay, we got the lines open now. Jeanette, hello. Jeanette, hello.
Hello again.
Hello again. We've got you now. If all else fails, turn off and turn on again with my mobile device. Cool. And that's what we're hoping to do in Parliament this year, is just turn everything off and on again. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show, Jeanette. Thank you for your patience with that one there. It is a one-man band here, but we do have listeners listening in, so perhaps let us know about yourself, about NZLoyal, and about the elections coming up next month.
Yeah, will do. I've been living on the coast for 8 years, originally from the UK, so I've been in New Zealand 24 years. Mostly I'm known in New Zealand as a healer. I've got an extraordinary healing gift. But when the mandates came in last year, I didn't want to take the experimental mRNA in the arm. And so it meant that I had to close my healing centre, which, you know, not only is that loss of income, but it meant I had to lay off a staff member. But also the clients that I work with traditionally are people that have got serious health conditions where more conventional medicine can't help. And so, you know, it was very sad for me not to be able to see my clients, and yeah, really not good for my clients. Went down to Wellington and was really pleased to be part of the Freedom Village. I was there for the whole 23 days. Was absolutely surprised when on day 3 of that experience, a team of police attacked me and left me with a broken sternum. I was assaulted by 5 different police officers. Up until that point, I'd absolutely trusted in the police. That really did open my eyes. And then since then, seeing how the police haven't properly investigated, you know, I've really seen the level of corruption that's here, and feel inspired to bring about a lot of change. I believe that the mandates, our government really overreached, us not being able to visit our loved ones when they were ill, hold their hands when they were dying, so many people being forced to take an experimental medical procedure, which is in breach of the Nuremberg Code, or risk their jobs or lose their homes. I thought that was absolutely appalling. And I also feel that the 120 politicians that were seated, you know, within the Houses of Parliament, or got seats within the Houses of Parliament, not one of them coming to speak to the people, that tells me we do not have a democracy here. And so I and many others now have formed a political party inspired by our leader, Liz Gunn, who many I know will know. Liz is of outstanding, you know, moral fibre, and she's drawn to her those people that, like myself, you know, enough is enough. The power needs to be returned to the people. Not one of us is a politician. We're all regular Kiwis that are just saying, no, lines in the sand now, enough is enough. You lot need to go. We need to give power back to regular Kiwis. We need to break away from the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum, who are clearly pulling the strings behind the scenes and making decisions that are affecting our farmers, mums and dads, everyday Kiwis, reducing, our standard of living, closing businesses. We've got to say no, enough is enough. We get to make the decisions to run our country in the way that we see fit.
Absolutely, and I do agree. That's the first thing I noticed about your party is it seems like just everyday Kiwis trying to push back in all sorts of suburbs and things like that. So you're part of the Whangaparoa if anyone is voting in that region. The candidate is Jeanette Wilson, and the party vote to go for is NZLoyal. And I actually found out about you naively, because never heard about you 48 hours ago, the party, I mean.
Oh, wow.
Found out about the party through a local business called George and Charlotte, who are a baby business. And she was also saying that as a businesswoman, she was mandated out of her old job and forced into self-employment. So that's how I found out about you. A few posters on the shop, and I was like, this seems interesting. And you actually display the policies on your website, which is NZLoyal.org.nz, in contrast to some of the other majors who just feels like they're just going for feel-good slogans.
Yeah, it's the same old. Whereas we're very, very clear on precisely what it is we're going to do. We've got Steve Oliver. He was the chap that, they tried to close down his gym, but he was working with youth and he didn't want to close down his gym. So he's standing as a candidate in New Lynn. Mm-hmm. We've also got Brenton Faithful, who is the first undertaker in New Zealand to talk out about what he was finding in the bodies of people that had the boosters. And so we're quite a fearless bunch, and we're growing in numbers. I think we've got 90 people waiting in the wings to become candidates. So there really is going to be a big push for New Zealand Loyal. We only got registered as a party. It was a week ago Monday. So it takes a while to go through that process, but now we're registered. It's full steam ahead.
I'm glad your team has the know-how to try and push back democratically in the system that we are born in. I always thought, as a young man, why the beehive didn't consist of, by default, 50% everyday Kiwis. Like, how we have a jury duty. I always wondered why we didn't have a democracy duty where everyday Kiwis were told that you had a 1-year segment, consignment in the beehive. It was paid. You were paid equally with your other political, parties and brethren. And I always wondered why that wasn't, there. But then I realized, well, actually, a lot of it seems rigged anyways. That's my perception, because throughout my whole entire life, it's always been Labour or National. It's never really been, there's always been but I'm not a political expert, so I'm just wondering, from a general public's point of view, firstly, thank you for actually reaching out to an everyday bloke like me, talking to a small minority on radio, but we'll also be available as a replay on MP3, which you can spread out as well. But if you do, and when you do get in Parliament, what are your first sort of 90 days? How are you going to turn the tables as sort of a minority number, really? Because how do we get the most of New Zealand to hear what's actually happening? Because I feel like a lot of the time, when you're watching the news and things like that, the reality is actually skewed. So people think it's going one way, but it's actually going another way. How are you seeing where New Zealand is really going if people don't kind of wake up to what's really happening? Since lockdowns, what I've noticed is just, our freedoms are being chipped away at, really. Yeah,
in a dramatic way, yes. So one of the first things the first thing that is facing us is a cost of living crisis. And so one of our main policies, which sometimes people raise their eyebrows or sometimes even mock, is we're looking at getting rid of income tax, GST, capital gains tax, tax on petrol, all the different taxes. You see, you're taxed in many, many different ways. and replacing that with a 1%. It's called a financial transactions tax, which most people have never heard about before. But if I look historically at what's happened, like taxation hasn't been around forever. So in the late, 1890, that's when it first came in. And back then it wasn't personal tax. It was only things like customs, land, death, and stamp duties. That's how they paid for things like hospitals. Personal tax only came in with the World Wars. And initially in New Zealand, you were only taxed if your income was over £500. And so most people, the equivalent of £500. So most people weren't being taxed. The working classes weren't being taxed really until World War II. And of course, our generation now, we forget that. We think we've always been taxed. But we were taxed firstly to finance the world wars. But what's happened is over time is the working class have been taxed more and more, and the wealthier people have been taxed less and less. And so now you've got a position where the bulk of our tax revenue is the PAYE, that either the self-employed are paying as they pay themselves the wages, or you as an employee, it's the tax is taken off before you get your wages.
On tax,
and we want to stop that.
Yeah, on tax as well. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I recently got made redundant. I'm going through a few interviews now as well. A lot of businesses are doing offshore hiring, especially with lockdowns. A lot of people can work remotely. So, Kiwis are losing jobs to overseas competitors, really, essentially. So in the midst of that, though, I've always been working. I've always had a day job. But because of rising expenses, I also had to have a side hustle. And that, for me, I had to dig deep into my natural talents. I was in the top 25 of X Factor, shamelessly enough, and I thought, I can actually sing. So there we go. I sing to backing tracks. I don't have a band, but I go sing at local markets. I like that feel because it's actually local businesses, local mums. The market that we play for is aucklandmamamarket.co.nz, one of the sponsors of the podcast, and they've just been really good. But this year, I've noticed that if I'm trying, usually I use I do a separate suffix, and I print out my bank statements and give it to the tax man and say, here we go, I've either made money or I haven't, right? But this year, it seems like there's more and more things that I need to know as an everyday person, but I don't really. Like, for example, if you own assets like equipment, equipment reduces, and now I have to make a calculation for that, and then I have to do this, and I have to do, and I'm thinking, tax has become so complicated that how does the everyday person not feel like we're almost set up to fail or be tripped up, or, if I didn't claim something here and there, I could potentially, be fined or go to jail and things like that. And it's just like, it's just so complicated. How has it become so complicated? Did it ever start off that way, or are we feeding some sort of tax beast?
No, it's become more and more complicated. We've only had GST, I think, since 86 in New Zealand. And then that's gradually crept up. So they find more and more ways to get more and more money off us.
Yes.
I was watching a video yesterday in the UK where somebody was being fined £80 for dropping a cigarette butt.
Wow.
And they were using the Environment Protection Act to charge this person. It's getting crazy. So the other thing you've got with our tax system at the moment is it is so complicated, just like you've described, but it also costs us a lot to administer. It's about 220 million operating costs and about 440 million in wages. So that's 660 million we can save ourselves straight away if we switch to a 1% financial payment tax. And the idea of the financial payment tax is that on average, every business day in New Zealand, $33.5 billion changes hands. And a lot of that, it's not just what we spend, our wages coming in or the money we spend. It's the banks and the big corporations and the big private investors gambling really on the stock exchange, purchasing currencies, purchasing stock exchange. If we take just a 1% payment tax, which we could do relatively easily just by altering the software of the 7 banks and Visa, they're the only organisations that are approved for doing those financial transactions in New Zealand. So it's just slightly altering the software of the 7 banks and Visa and start collecting a 1% payment tax, which would mean that your listeners they'd pay 1% on their wages or their pension coming in, and then they only pay 1% tax when they purchase. And for most working class Kiwis, in fact, I would say all working class Kiwis, that's going to be a great, great saving. We're going to have more money in our pocket. Local businesses also won't pay the business tax. At the moment, most businesses are paying tax at about 28%. That will go as well. And it's a simpler system. It's a fairer system. It's going to mean it will probably dampen down speculation, the gambling on fine, rates of interest between currencies or with stocks and shares. But the net improvement in terms of our economy will be absolutely awesome. And I think, wouldn't everybody like to receive the money they've earned without the deduction of tax?
All right. Yeah, these are really great ideas. Firstly, we do have a chat listening in. Craig, hello. Welcome to the show, mate. If you do want to call in and ask NZLoyal any questions, NZLoyal are running for this year's elections. They've got some great ideas, certainly. Look, you're speaking to the choir, absolutely. The thing with me, I'm not sure when you woke up. You mentioned before COVID, you were kind of a little bit, I guess, what you would call quote unquote normal until you had that conflict with the police about what you thought was just voicing your opinion, but it seemed like they threw the hard glove at you. I was actually watching the interview with you with Liz Gunn and how one female police officer almost killed you, to speak lightly.
Yeah.
And you've got children, so I really felt for you because I felt like you were just a typical Kiwi, and now you're forced into trying to run into politics, which I'm sure you never even dreamt about 10 years ago as a natural healer. But here you are now. You're a lot more well spoken than me. I'll tell you that. You're your history, which is really good. I'll tell you a little bit about me too, because you're speaking to some random person on the internet. So here we go. How I kind of woke up was I was at the OE. I was doing my OE in England, exciting place to play music. That's what I thought at the time. I was in my early 20s, signed musician to a small label, and I thought I had to be in England. But of course I had to pay the bills too. So I joined a waitering agency called At Your Service over there in the UK. They are still active. And they've been delivering amazing guest experiences since 1992, according to their slogan. But what was interesting about that experience is I started doing off sort of business corporate stuff, and I always turned up. I had a friendly Kiwi accent, they seemed to like it, and I was reliable. And 6 months in, I actually started to do VIP stuff. So red carpet, I got to see Ewan McGregor in private settings, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, musicians, actors, Hollywood, and amongst that as well, we're politicians. So 3 nights I actually served for the Bill and Hillary Clinton Foundation. Now, that was an eye-opener.
Wow.
Because in 2013, Bill Clinton, out of his own mouth, there were only 4 waiters in the room and maybe Bill Clinton and I would say 50 guests. It was silver plate dish, you pay per plate, that kind of thing. I don't really know how that goes. They were auctioning in lavish stuff, like holidays, experiences with master chefs, paintings, that kind of thing. But amongst that, they also had entertainment. And there were 2 things that I heard from Bill Clinton's mouth. In 2013, he said, well, the awkward purple elephant in the room, as we agree, is overpopulation. That's kind of all I heard because I was, waitering. And that always stuck with me because that was 2013, right? Overpopulation. That was the purple elephant in the room, according to his mouth. And the other thing I heard at a separate event was actually bankers. All the major banks were kind of dining and whining, and it makes you wonder why all the interest rates are the same. But I overheard them saying, to prepare a nation for war, you must first instill in everyday life hatred, fear, racism, and divide. So
Yep.
out of my 2 or 3 years in England, I feel really blessed to be in the room at the right place at the right time to hear those two pivotal things that have changed me forever. And here I am now talking
Absolutely.
to someone that could actually make a difference. You are sitting in Parliament. The elections are on October 14th. And here is a bunch of what I see as everyday Kiwis basically cornered into a corner, and due to extreme circumstances are forced to try and fight back. And here you are clawing back. What is it that you are trying to what is it that you want to tell New Zealanders right now that are listening in, Craig being one of them? So I'm sure there will be more, but tell us.
The main thing is that, you've already alluded to it with the media. The media are not telling us the full story. So we are being led into a very, very dangerous situation. If we look at something like fuel, diesel, I can tell you that, the closing down of Marsden Point, firstly, it was run down over years. Different successive governments allowed it to be run down, and then they've closed it. But normally there's 7 tankers that come into this country every month, and this month there's only 2.5 tankers coming in. So we're going to be put in a very precarious situation. And using that language you were just using about, what the bankers were saying about if you're preparing a country for war, if we start to look at what's happening here, if we cannot be energy independent, and I mean not only Marsden Point, but with the oil wells that I know Mexican teams have come in recently and closed oil wells in Taranaki, it's looking really, really scary. It's looking like that's exactly what's happened. We are seeing the divisiveness. We're seeing what's happening, the terrible things that they're doing to our young children in school. It's almost like there are so many things happening, so many different distractions that we're missing the main things. And, we need to break away absolutely from the UN, WHO. If we don't opt out of the WHO treaty before November, if I forget what the deadline is, then anybody outside of this country, the WHO can say, right, there's a pandemic in Australia, we've got to shut down New Zealand.
Yep.
Our small businesses cannot afford for that to happen. Our kids have spent the best part of 2 years in masks in schools, and a lot of them are having the trouble with their language and their speech. My daughter's trained to be a speech therapist, but a lot of the kids are having trouble with, when we learn to speak as a young child, we need to see the facial expressions and the movements of the mouth.
Yes.
And this whole psychology of wearing a mask takes us back to being slaves. I believe we've all got cellular memory of being slaves, and it's a really negative thing for us to see other people's faces covered in masks. It's saying you have no voice. And we do have a voice, and you will have a voice with New Zealand Loyal. We say that if you want to put yourself in power, rather than the red or the blue, vote for New Zealand Loyal, because it's our agenda. We don't want to be politicians. We want to give the power back to the people. So that, say, in the area where I am, there's a couple of issues. One is what was a golf club is going to be turned into housing if we don't do something to stop it. A ferry that supports part of our community suddenly is no longer working, and people can't get to work. As a local people, we're disempowered. We need to have the power given back to the people so that the people can act and address those things that are important to their community, and that's what New Zealand Loyal is all about.
Thank you so much for that. Are you happy to take a live call?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We do have a live caller. You're online now on Kiwi Radio. Hello. Hello, Kiwi Radio. What I'll do is I'll get them back. But yes, certainly there needs to be some decoupling with what seems like unelected bodies.
Exactly. It's not democratic. When did we ever vote for anybody at the UN? We didn't. And when we look at who, the second major funder after the United States is Bill Gates. Well, he's a computer guy. He's not a health expert. Why should they be dictating what we do in this country? We've really got to push back. But like you say, let's do it through the system. We've all been born into this system, so let's push back through this system.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do now is, do you mind doing just a quick musical break while I try and get the phone lines working, if that's okay?
Yeah, cool.
What we'll do is we'll play some music for you. Things are pretty messy out there. I certainly agree. So here we go. And on lines of that, this is a local artist that we've also interviewed called Liberty with a track called Messy. We'll be right back with you. We do have Jeanette Wilson from NZLoyal joining us today and just having a quick chat about the elections coming up, hopefully making some impact to our lives here.
Keep the light out. Better shut your mouth. Don't talk too loud. Let the truth out. And you blow it up, another overreaction. Almost out of luck, ready for the fracture. Call for backup because it's messy. And you blow it up, another overreaction. Almost out of luck, ready for the fracture. Call for backup before it's messy. Whoa. Whoa, just another day. Whoa, keep enjoy away. Whoa, now you're here to stay. At least let me in. See you blow it up, another overreaction. Almost out of luck, ready for the fracture. Call for backup because it's messy. You blow it up, another overreaction. Almost out of luck, ready for the fracture. Call for backup because it's messy. Whoa. One day you will
Okay, Kiwi Radio. Welcome to Kiwi Radio Live Caller.
Hi, Ralphie.
How are you? Who are we speaking with? Is that you, Craig?
Oh, it's Craig here. Yeah, mate, I'm doing well. It's Friday. It's a nice sunny day on the road.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. We also have Nitin in the chat room there. If you've got any questions for NZLoyal, who are running for this month's elections, we do have the lovely Jeanette Wilson from the Whangaparoa representative of NZLoyal.org.nz, Craig. So maybe you want to ask them, well, what's on your mind with this year's elections? Anything?
Oh, well, I've just put some stuff out there. She can talk to it. Cause
She's on now. She's on now.
Yep. I just, because I don't want to stay too long in a busy day, but it just seems to me that, these people in Wellington, and I've been listening to you talk a bit, but it seems to me that these people forgot their job. Now, when I say that,
You're right.
you see, I drive a truck, you see, and my job is to drive that truck, and I have to make sure that nothing comes off my truck, and I have to be friendly and courteous and smile and not drive like a maniac and not speed and be a professional driver, you see. Now, if you work in a kitchen, you have to cook the food and you have to be smartly dressed and you have to take care of your hygiene and you have to be safe. If you're an airline pilot or bus driver or whatever, you get my point, and it seems to me the government forgot their job, and in my mind, their job is they have to run the schools so people can, like Ralphie here, can send his child to school and get a good education. They have to run the hospitals and make sure they're up to date. They have to work with treatment and drugs available. They have to look after the roads, which they don't do, which is absolutely disgusting. And then they have to put the bad guys in jail. So that's the immediate stuff. And then in the long term, they have to look at things like green development. Where's the country going in 30 years? Well, what are we going to do about housing? I mean, the Auckland Harbour Bridge to me is a prime example of something that really should have been taken care of 20 years ago, but they've, like I said, they forgot their job. They're more worried about, well, we'll give you guys $100,000 so you can have you men can wear women's underwear and walk down the street and tell everyone how proud you are because you proud yourself, which is great, right? Which is great, but that's not your job. Your job is to make sure the roads are safe, make sure you build the economy, go out there, get trade deals, promote the place, create a place where it's safe. You know, the judiciary is a joke. Someone gets murdered, they get 10 years, and they're out in 6 because of good behaviour. So I can tell you, most people I talk to, because like I said, I'm a driver and I'm out there and I'm talking to people, and that's what people want. People don't want to hear big words and fancy words. They just want a place where they feel safe, where they have a fair go. And when it comes to taxes, people don't mind paying tax. But the thing is, you know, for what we're paying, you know, we should have all that stuff. Plus, we should have free medical and we should have free dental.
On that note, on taxes,
that's
now
what you pay for, you know.
Jeanette Wilson will be sitting in the Whangaparoa area, and I'm actually a local as well. What I've noticed, I've recently moved into the area there, Jeanette, and what I've noticed is what's different in this area is you're paying taxes, but the rubbish collection is actually not part of that. You have to pay separately for rubbish bags and things like that. I don't quite understand that, really. What are your thoughts on that? You've been a local for quite some time there, Jeanette. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's all I've known here. So, yeah, I mean, that will be down to the local council and then presumably subcontracting that. But I think Craig's absolutely spot on when he says that the people at Wellington, they've forgotten what they're doing. And I think a big part of that is the ridiculous salaries that they're on. Straight after the election, they're going to be having a vote to increase their own salaries.
Oh, wow. That's
the
amazing.
The Prime Minister's on 471,000. Your leaders of your parties, they're on 179,000. Plus they get an extra $2,138 for other members, up to 5. Then $1,430 for 5 to 20. You start adding this up, they're on a fair old whack, and they're going to give themselves some more. Well, our teachers, on the other hand, you know, starting teacher salaries $48,000. That's not enough. How do you live on that?
Yeah.
Both of you have then got to work, and your standard MPs $163,000. Even your police officers on about 60,000. I don't know how they justify what they're taking out of the personal coffers. You know, that money could be better spent on teachers and hospitals and the roads. The roads are a mess at the moment.
It reminds me of the movie Wolf of Wall Street, really. They got to cushion their own pockets to upkeep their lavish lifestyles, which brings me back to my first idea, which will save us thousands by the sounds of it, probably millions, is if we had a democracy, you know how you have jury duty? Democracy duty. Okay. Let's put 50% of the seats to actual Kiwis, working mums, teachers, policemen, you know, all sorts of things. Oh, well, I don't know about policemen, but maybe. I don't know. But you know what I mean. Put them on a 50K salary, right? Boom. Or let's make it 70, something really nice. But then reduce the others, the career politicians. I know someone working in Australia for one of the Queenstown politicians there. And they always tell me about, she said that when they're working for the politicians, some like talk a good game and they're really good at being re-elected. Like we're in the face of the public. Yeah. They're really good managers of being re-elected, but they're actually not good managers of the people. You know what I mean? But they talk a good game, which is what attracted me straight away about your party. Have you heard of NZLoyal there, Craig?
Oh no, I haven't, to be honest. But
okay, so head along to NZLoyal, NZLoyal.org.nz. The very first fundamental policy that got my attention was in New Zealand's participation in the UN, WEF, and WHO, a decoupling of those organisations because, you know, pre-COVID, these bodies didn't really matter much. You know what I mean? But it seems like they're now making those decisions. And an unelected body. What do you think of that, there, Jeanette?
Yeah, I liken it to Europe because originally I was from the UK. I've been here 24 years. But in the UK, what happened was back in the 70s, we joined the common market and it was for trade. It was for deals. It's to allow us to export and import goods. But then it became this bureaucratic nightmare, which is why then the English people wanted out of Europe. And it's the same thing. These people, it's not democratic, but they're going to have power over us when most Kiwis are busy getting on with life, struggling to pay bills, juggling the needs of a busy day and not realizing what's going on behind the scenes until it's too late. Because if we don't opt out, particularly of that WHO treaty, by November, we're going to be caught up in that. And somebody in an office somewhere in the world, Switzerland or wherever, is just going to say, oh, look, there's a pandemic over in Holland, right, we better shut down the whole world. And we won't be able to do anything. And it's been bad enough here protesting our government over the last lot of mandates. But what do you do when the person you want to protest against isn't even in this country? We're going to be absolutely stuffed.
Mm. Okay. Any final words there, Craig?
Oh, no. Like I said, that's a feeling I get from, most everyday Kiwis. We just, we just want to get what we pay for. And just a fair go. That's it. No one likes paying tax, but hey, you got to pay tax because
I don't mind paying tax, but I was actually telling Jeanette earlier that it's become so complicated now. So you almost need a degree with a degree with a degree to kind of understand if you're doing the right thing. So I don't mind paying tax. It's just it's become complicated, and B, it seems like we're cushioning the incorrect pockets, like it's a trickle up of the fat cats, I'll give you another example. You touched on the Auckland Harbour Bridge. They had a cycling bridge project. It looks like that $51 million project was actually axed. So
well, what do you
it's
mean?
like
There was $50
building
million for a nice little photo.
It's like it almost reminds me of undemocratic countries like the CCP running China or something, where they build these massive projects and get other countries in debt called and then they kind of cancel it midway,
Yeah, but there's a difference between
Debt
China
trap.
and New Zealand. There's
Is
a
there
big
though?
difference.
Is there?
Yeah, there is.
I hope so.
There is, and there's a big difference between New Zealand and Nazi Germany, and it's not what you think.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
What are your thoughts on that
Chinese...
there, Jeanette, with kind of like debt trap diplomacy, and especially because if you do, get seats in Parliament, you'll probably be dealing with these sorts of things, debt trap diplomacy and dealing with other countries that are not probably as, democratic and things like that. What are your thoughts about sort of New Zealand's relationships with the international stage?
Oh, there's a lot of treaties, far more treaties than people would imagine. There's about 2,000 treaties, some between just Maori people, some between what's called the Crown, the Queen of Right of New Zealand. So there's a lot of different treaties in place. I'm not an expert on all of those, but as a general rule, I believe that, we see a lot of money wasted where they start planning something.
Yeah.
You can, the Three Waters already, they've spent so many millions of dollars talking about what they're going to do with Three Waters when they haven't even got the buy-in of the people, and the people don't want that to happen.
Yeah,
so that's absolutely wasted water. And with the co-governance thing, like a lot of people don't understand about co-governance, and when you go look it up, you can't find the legislation, and you've got to find a document called He Puapua, which Jacinda Ardern denied existed, and then all of a sudden, oh yes, it does exist. Well, that, where did that come from? And that was a UN. It came down from UNDRIP, which is to do with Indigenous people. And so we've got this document, which is not a democratic document. It's not for the people, by the people, but it will mean that people that aren't Maori won't have the same voting rights and the same rights to healthcare, and they'll have a different prison service and punishment system than everybody else. You're actually going to create apartheid. But most New Zealanders don't even realise that that's going on because it isn't being given the publicity.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. We do want the New Zealand people or anyone listening in right now to have their say. Open lines are 09889 8555. All right, Craig, well, I hope you have a safe drive out there on the roads. Thank you for doing what you do. You're certainly the backbone of our commerce there. All right, thank you so much, Craig.
Oh no, We all do our thing. We'll talk again. Thank you, Ralphie.
All right, thanks for your call, mate.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Yep, open lines.
Thank you, Craig.
Open lines 889 and we do have the lovely Jeanette Wilson on the phone right now. So if you've got any pressing questions, please let us know. We've got about 15 minutes more of the program, and would love to have your input. It looks like you've got, you and the NZLoyal team have got a big project ahead. So what's the first 90 days going to look like?
Right. If depending on how many people we get into Parliament, it would be lovely to turn around to the news media channels and have them start reporting the truth rather than the very biased agenda that they've been promoting. We know that the Labour government paid at least, 55 million to get the different news outlets to report the news the way the government wanted. Well, that's called propaganda.
That is.
So
I'm
that has to
amazed that
stop.
that actually happened. How they could get so much airtime, and no wonder the majority of New Zealand think, New Zealand's this is what's happening, because there was just so much funding in that, right? I heard the other day that TV3 went bankrupt, and so are they going to get another handout? I mean, why are we still feeding that beast,
Absolutely. Yeah, in any other industry, you don't get that chance, do you? So, if a business goes bust, it's because it's not meeting the needs of that marketplace. So why should it be different for the media outlets? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd act to save the farmers from restrictive regulations. Not pollution-wise, but climate change-wise, New Zealand as a country, it's 0.17% is our impact, if you like, on the world's environment. Our farmers are doing the right thing. We've got the best dairy industry in the world. Nobody would say otherwise. We've even had the Chinese come over here to learn from what our dairy farmers are doing. But the Resource Management Act and I think it's SNAs, where you've got wetlands on a farm and then you can't farm. It's putting untold pressure on the farmers. And the figures that the farmers are coming out with now are saying that most farms are not profitable. Well, they can't sustain that. I come from, my partner's a fifth generation dairy farmer. You have highs, you have lows, but year on year now, they're not making the profit that they used to, and that's not sustainable. And this idea of changing, a very healthy dairy farm into pine trees, that just doesn't make sense longer term. That's absolutely crazy.
Okay.
We are a food basket of the world in terms of the dairy. We should be supporting our farmers, making sure that they're not polluting the environment, yes, but being sensible about this. Where's good old common sense?
Absolutely. Farmers are the backbone of any country, but it seems a lot of our farmlands are being bought. Bill Gates, for example, and things like that. Or maybe not New Zealand so much, maybe America. But we do have are you happy to take another call there, Jeanette? Because I do want to share the stage.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so open lines 0988 8555, but we are also taking international calls. All right, Nitin, we have from India. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Ralphie.
Okay. Well, Nitin, welcome to the show. We do have NZLoyal.org.nz, a minor party that we're hoping to give some legs for this next month's New Zealand elections, October 14. You're mentioning in India there, Nitin, that there's a bit of a food crisis. We were just talking about farming. Is there anything you want to add to the conversation right now?
I am predicting a food crisis here because since we had irregular rain here, and some of the local producers' price has shot up, especially tomatoes price has been shot up like drastically in the last month. So I expected like a 50% hike, but it was a 100% hike, and tomatoes were in demand. And currently, what I'm expecting, which is in high demand in the next year, is going to be rice, wheat, onions. These will be top of the list. And already India's banned his export on rice and wheat, and they're levying tax, and they've reduced tax to imports also. So yeah.
Now, Nitin, here's your chance to ask someone that could hopefully make a change for New Zealand in particular. Is there, and again, these aren't career politicians running the game here. These are everyday Kiwis, by the sounds of it, forced into a corner and sort of joining arms to try and make a change. NZLoyal.org.nz. Do you have any questions for Jeanette here, Wilson,
Yeah,
who could potentially be up in the beehive soon?
yeah. I wish her all the best. I have two particular questions. One would be which is actually faced by the farmers here. So farmers' profits versus the production and sales, because whatever they produce and whatever the price which is sold out, it's totally different. So for example, if they sell it in the local price to a wholesaler to $1, they sell it to to the retailer and then customer to $10. So there's a gap of $9. So do you or can you help a farmer reduce this gap so that he can get a major cut on the profits and also reduce the price to the end seller?
Jeanette?
Yeah, excellent question, Nathan. Because of the family being involved with dairy farming, I can absolutely say that's the same situation here in New Zealand. What the dairy farmer receives for the milk products and what we then see in the supermarket is it's absurd. It's like 10 times. And what happened here in New Zealand was that we used to have more than one dairy company that we sold our milk to, but then they merged and we ended up with a monopoly with just the one company, Fonterra. And I think that was a dreadful mistake, because when you've got just the one dairy company that everybody's got to sell their milk to, then that's when that company makes obscene profits. I mean, what they pay their top executives is just ridiculous. And they'll cut the payout to farmers. So you want to encourage a situation where there isn't just a monopoly, so that whoever's buying the milk off the farmers, there's a competitive situation. And so that would be one strategy to do that. You could also have an investigation at a government level. You can ask for a commission of inquiry into the profits that they're making. One of the areas where this has happened recently is over in Australia. The Australian government has asked for there to be a commission of inquiry into the profits the banks over there were making. Now, we know that the banks over here in New Zealand make more out of us than the banks in Australia make out of the Australian people. So that would be another tool, another strategy. But you're absolutely right, it should not be that way. The other thing that's happened in New Zealand with the dairy industry is that here it's not lawful, or it's not legal to sell raw milk, yet there is a demand for raw milk. A lot of people with an arthritic condition would say that they can't handle the regular milk that's been pasteurized, heat treated, but the raw milk actually, not only can they tolerate it, but it makes their arthritis less. Now, I'm not making any medical claims for the raw milk because I don't know. This is hearsay. But it's hearsay that I see again and again, on social media, that people are looking for this raw milk because it has helped them. So it'd be one thing to check if the raw milk does help arthritis, but the other thing is, the local farmers should be able to sell their produce at the gate, whether it's butter, cheeses and milks. And I would say that there must be rules around that prohibiting it, because it's very rare that we see that. I only know of one farmer in New Zealand that's doing that, and I know he's struggled with it. But that would be another option, that the farmers can sell some of their produce to the local community, and then the local community can buy locally rather than buying from the big national supplier of the supermarkets.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions there, Nitin?
Yeah, one last question. So this is regarding this student loan. So do you think
Yes.
that, for example, any teenager who goes to the college to get a college degree and gets trapped by the student loan concept, is he getting any? He or her getting any value for the degree that he's getting? Like, is the loan worth the education?
All right. So I was born in England, and the education system was free. And me personally, I believe that it should be free, that you shouldn't, as a young student, you shouldn't have to be put in that position where you get put into debt. I will share that over in America, the student loan borrowing now is really, really high. And one of the things that people don't realise, and this is true for America, not necessarily for New Zealand or for India, but over in America, if you go bankrupt, all your debts are written off except student loans. Even if you're made bankrupt in America, if you've got a student loan, you've still got your student loan debt to pay the other side. And so that worries me that might be brought in here, because that would be another it's another way of those people in authority keeping us in debt. So my personal opinion is that education should be free. We shouldn't be burdening our students with that. A lot of them then, they end up having to take on, extra work while they study. Now, me, when I went through, I didn't go to university. I left school at 16, but I studied for 2 degrees while I was working. That's a whole different thing. It took me longer. It took me 13 years, and I really value getting that education. But I wasn't in debt because I was working at the time. And I think students are already under a lot of pressure, and to burden them with the financial debt as well is a mistake.
Yeah, really good words there. Nissan, thank you so much for calling in. And
Thank you, Ralphie, for having me.
Yep, thank you very much for putting your two.
And thank you for the questions.
I hope you have a great day there. Thank you so much.
Wonderful Friday. Thank you.
Well, there's some interaction there for the radio station, which is what we like. We like people joining in the conversation. It's not all about us. I think of myself there, Jeanette, as like a facilitator, and I try and get other people putting their 2 cents in. So we're in the final sort of 5 minutes of the show. Are there any closing statements you want to tell the New Zealand public who are going to be putting their vote in the ballot there for October 14, 2023? Any closing words?
Yeah, I would say look at the policies. Take time to look at the policies. We can get pulled in being drawn to the person that, looks nice or speaks nicely at the candidate meeting, but have a hard look at the policies. Do those policies represent what you want? And don't be put off by this propaganda about, a vote for a small party is a wasted vote. That is propaganda. We will be putting in a complaint about that to Electoral Commission, because that really that's the key message that seems to be coming across from our media at the moment. And it's not true. People need to vote for the party that represents, that has the policies that they support. And I really do want to talk about climate change. There is not consensus in the scientific community about the extent to which human beings are causing the climate change, and to what extent the climate change is just a natural cycle of this earth. There needs to be proper scientific debate. We don't want to find ourselves heralded down a path like we were with the COVID, where there wasn't proper scientific debate. We don't want to find that we are pushed down a very narrow path in one direction because of this so-called climate change science that hasn't been properly debated by the community, the scientific community. And so just like you're saying, you like to facilitate different opinions, we need more of that. We need more of that at every level. But we particularly need it with the scientists. If we'd had that debate with all the scientists about COVID, our government would have made different choices. They would have probably isolated the elderly and the sick and let the rest of us keep on working, let the economy continue to thrive, and let the kids continue to be educated. There would have been a different path. And it's the same with the climate change. The Labour Party in particular are really pushing an agenda here, but there isn't consensus within the scientific community about this, and those that speak out are being silenced, just like they were with COVID. And party vote, New Zealand Loyal.
All right, well, it's been the fastest hour of talk radio. I do appreciate you reaching out to Kiwis and possibly, hopefully making a difference.
Yes, thank you, Ralphie.
Yep. I always say talk local, shop local, do everything local. I like some of your policies, how you're saying you're trying to bring energy back, get us self-sufficient and all that sort of stuff, where our farmers can grow food. Why are they being restricted with so many rules and things like that? Let's, lift the smoke and, let's not make things
Yeah.
complicated. It's actually a simple fix, right? So do you think that if we
It's a simple fix.
vote,
there's
if
just got
enough
to
of
be
us
the will
vote,
to do it.
if enough of us vote for NZLoyal, you think
We
that's
could get things changed almost overnight, seriously, because, yeah.
all right? Well, thank you so much. I wish you and your party the best for this elections. I certainly am one for an advocate, so there we go. And I really do appreciate you for being really down to earth, but really knowing your things as well. Like, you're very well spoken, and obviously, on a final light note, can I close off on a light note? One of the things I researched about you is you've touched on mediums. Now, Father's Day was recent. I, for one, never knew my father. My mum hid him away from me, and apparently he didn't want anything to do with me, whatever. She was 18 at the time, singing in Japan, and they had an encounter there. And anyways, he was never part of my life, and apparently he died before I got to even know him. But on Father's Day, I got a visit from him, and I asked him one question. I said, "How old are you?" And he said 53, which is impossible because I'm 40 now, so he would have been 13 when he conceived me. But maybe he died at 53, who knows? It wasn't so much the dream that spooked me. What spooked me is I woke up with a cold hand that was present on my shoulder. It was like comforting.
Wow.
It was like an obvious handprint. What are your thoughts on that? Was I going crazy? It was Father's Day. It wasn't the dream. It was the hand.
You'll be the second person I've spoke to this week where they had a visit from their father on Father's Day. The lady had the alarm. She wasn't at home, and the alarm went off in her home to say there was a human being in a lounge, and there wasn't. It was her dad that had gone to visit on Father's Day, which is so sweet. Bear in mind that 52 can mean he was born in 52.
Oh, 53.
Does that make more
53.
sense?
He said 53.
So, but not 53 years. Look at, was he born in 1953? Is that what he meant?
I actually don't. Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I do my math correctly, we're in 2023 now, and I'll quickly minus 1953. Well, that would make him like 70, something like that. I didn't even think of that. I just thought he meant 53 because he only said, he didn't say 53 years. He just said 53. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're an interesting person. Have you been doing mediums long, or is that your normal thing before you were forced into a corner to be a politician?
So I was a bank manager in the UK, and then at the age of 31, I started seeing spirit for the first time ever.
Wow.
And, you worry that you're going mad initially. And then I ended up with my own TV series here in New Zealand called Dare to Believe.
Oh, wow.
And that was a TV3 show. And it was at that time, and that's a few years ago now, that I was aware that all the good journalists were being taken out of TV3. They all disappeared. There was like a clean sweep, and they took away all the journalists, the proper, investigative journalists.
Ones,
And so, I knew then that something was wrong, because that shouldn't be happening. When do you see investigative journalism? It's gone.
Yeah, I always wondered why news these days seems so polished, like it's all in a studio and everything. And where is the people out there? I see that your party leader, Liz Gunn, and you doing more investigative journalism than the actual journalists themselves. Being out there and showing.
Absolutely.
And here I am, also a typical Kiwi, but forced to be a radio broadcaster. Never went to broadcasting school. Well, obviously, I went to audio engineering school, which helps because it helps me with the technical aspects of it. But again, also cornered and forced to do things. Look, I wish you all the best. Your party certainly seems legit and just full of normal, everyday Kiwis trying to make a change. So that's what I really like about it.
Yep. Lovely. Thank you, Ralphie. I really appreciate you giving me the time to talk about what we're doing.
All right. So that's a vote for NZLoyal.org.nz. All right. Thank you. Closing statements done. Anything else in the last 10 seconds?
Oh, yeah. A vote for New Zealand Loyal is a vote to put you back in power.
Oh, I love that.
Put yourself back in power with New Zealand Loyal.
I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, Rolfie. Bye.
We'll hope to speak soon. Don't be a stranger. Thank you. That was Jeanette from NZLoyal.org.nz. We are a Kiwi music show, so we all close off with a little bit of Kiwiana for you. Marmalade is the band from Auckland. The track is called Bright. Stay on the bright side of life, everybody. Vote October 14, 2023. Vote NZLoyal. Not a paid advertisement, I just think they're cool.
I've been sitting here in my bed socks, wondering if I'll ever become a rock star. How will I make it to the top when every road sign screams to stop? But I got no time in my mind. Will I ever make it, or will I have to fake it until I'm bright? Will I have to break it? Will I end up hating it when I'm bright? Maybe I should buy a paddling pool. Do you of a fool? But I got no time in my mind. Will I ever make it, or will I have to fake it until I'm bright? Will I have to break it? Will I end up hating it when I'm bright?
Thank you very much for joining us here at Kiwi Radio, playing live in Mike Martin's shop in Canada. Check it out, mtg.toys. So thank you for playing us in your shop. Thank you to Craig and Nitin for joining the conversation.
Will I ever make it, or will I have to fake it until I'm bright? Will I have to break it? Will I end up hating it when I'm bright? When I'm bright? When I'm bright?
Look in the bright side of life. To check out more of those policies, head over to NZLoyal.org.nz. And finally, I just want to remind everyone that we have a regular live stream that is Tuesdays, 7 p.m. New Zealand time, where we get to interview some amazing artists. Next week, we're actually going to be interviewing Chris Young from Tadpole, the world famous in New Zealand band Tadpole. That's amongst one of the bigger interviews that I've had this year, so that's going to be really interesting as well. And I might ask him about the elections, who knows. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Stay cool, stay